Curious about what happened on Untold Italy's 2024 tours? Join us as we chat with some of our amazing tour hosts to uncover surprise snowfalls in the Dolomites, to intimate farm-to-table experiences in Sicily, and all the highlights of a wonderful year of travel in Italy with Untold Italy Tours on this, our 250th episode of the Untold Italy podcast.
Ciao a tutti and benvenuti to Untold Italy, the travel podcast where you go to the towns and villages, mountains and lakes, hills and coastlines of Bella Italia. Each week your host, Katie Clark, takes you on a journey in search of magical landscapes, history, culture, wine, gelato, and of course, a whole lot of pasta. If you're dreaming of Italy and planning future adventures there, you've come to the right place.
Ciao friends, welcome and thank you for joining us on Untold Italy today as we celebrate 250 episodes of the podcast. And wow, this milestone has quite snuck up on me actually. What started out as a rough idea by my friend Josie has taken me on an incredible journey not only around Italy but also around the world as I connect with Italy-loving travellers both online and in person, some of whom have joined the Untold Italy team. Thanks to this podcast, we built something pretty special that I'm very proud of. So to all of our listeners and especially to the OG, the originals, grazie, thank you so much for supporting the show. It really does mean the world to me and my team. I know many of you have been tuning in since the very beginning in 2020 and stuck with us through thick and thin and COVID as we came out the other side and ventured back out into the world and on our travels together in Italy. Wow, it's been a wonderful ride over the last 5 years. So if you've been here from the start or you're just joining us now or somewhere in between, welcome. It's great to have you here with us as we all dream of Italy. For our 250th episode today, I wanted to spend some time reflecting on the year that was, exploring the boot from top to toe with Untold Italy Tours. Joining me today are a few of our wonderful tour hosts, Olivia, Giulia and Henna, with their thoughts on what was a magical 2024 and what they're looking forward to next year. Andiamo, let's get started. Benvenute everyone, so great to have you all here. We do have a few missing as they are still on the road with guests, but I am absolutely thrilled you could contribute to this episode and give everyone a little insight on what happened on tour with Untold Italy in 2024. What a year it was, hey, so much fun. And what I'd like to do is go around and get you to introduce yourselves and let everyone know a little bit about you and which tours you led in 2024. So, Liv, can we start with you?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me again, Katie. Hi, everyone. I'm Olivia, obviously, and I've got the pleasure of creating many of our itineraries for our Untold Italy tours with Katie. I've got a big interest in food and wine. You might have heard me on podcast with Katie in the past with my partner, Andrea. We run Italian Wine Tales, so we're studying our sommelier course. And in the meantime, I also host some of the tours. So in 2024, I hosted our Chianti in spring and our Piedmont in spring tours, as well as our first ever Dolomites tour this fall, and the wine and wellness retreat in southern Tuscany, which was lots of fun.
Thanks, Liv. Okay, Giulia, how did you go this year?
Ciao a tutti. Well, Katie, I absolutely loved leading the 2024 tours. Lots of fun on the road, lots of great people. By the way, ciao a tutti, everyone. I'm Giulia. I am a tour director and also I help the team to design some of the tours, especially the East Sicily one for 2024. I am from Emilia-Romagna. And this year I have led 3 tours in Emilia-Romagna, also one private tour. And I also hosted the East Sicily and West Sicily. It was great because we had the incredible guests as always. And what I especially loved this year was actually really seeing especially the East Sicily tour that I helped design, actually having it happen and see it live for me was a very, very big pride.
Amazing, Giulia. And you actually do some work for some other companies. Wondering, can you share a little bit about what's different about the Untold Italy tours that you lead?
Well, first of all, the size of the groups. So the experience with Untold Italy is so much more intimate. And I feel as a tour director, I can really get to know the group, and the connection that is created. It's definitely more deep, and I can see that the guests really enjoy this part, being a small group. Second element, in my opinion, is absolutely the name already Untold. Let us understand that what we normally do is not something we find with bigger companies. First of all, because, for example, the locals that we meet are small artisans, small shops off the beaten path. So this would be the two main elements that I would say really different and really make Untold Italy such a fantastic experience.
That's amazing. Thank you, Giulia. Wonderful. Okay, now, Henna, this was your first time working with us, and I'd love to introduce you to our audience. So go ahead.
Thanks, Katie. Thanks for inviting me here, and thanks for inviting me onto the team. It's been a fantastic first year with Untold. I'm Henna. I come from the United States. I am from Massachusetts, a small island called Nantucket. So a lot of my life, I have been working in tourism. I come from a very touristic destination. And for the past 10 years, I've been living in Italy. I spent 8 of those 10 years in Sicily. So my home right now is, let's say, a little bit between Sicily and Liguria. I got married this year. My husband is up here in Liguria. He's part of my heart, but some of my heart is also still in Sicily. So I keep an apartment in Cefalù, and we're figuring out a game plan for the next years. I've worked at a cooking school in Sicily, managing a lovely rural place in Sicily, and then also as a tour host for other companies, along with some freelance work in communications. But being with Untold this year, I was able to lead the Piedmont tour and Liguria, and it was absolutely fantastic as an introduction. Both tours were this fall, so I feel fresh off the tour path and very excited about the way things are going.
It was so great to have you on board. And of course, you have this connection with Piedmont, don't you? Because you studied there.
True. I came to Italy I came to do a master's in food, culture, and communication at the University of Gastronomic Sciences. It's about an hour outside of Turin in a town called Pollenzo. And I figured I'd be here for a year. I'd do my master's, see what life in Italy was like, maybe a little bit longer. And now, yes, it's been exactly 10 years as of a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, Aguri, congratulations. It has a way of doing that, doesn't it, Italy?
It does.
So what I thought I'd do now, team, and as I mentioned earlier, there are some people missing from this call as they're busy with guests in Umbria, but we know they're having a great time over there. We've seen some beautiful photos and videos coming through. But what I'd like to understand from all of you is maybe some of the highlights of the tours that you led this year. So, Liv, let's start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first things first, it's always a pleasure when we get repeat clients. And we were so lucky this fall. We had so many repeat guests who've been not only just on one Untold Italy tour, but some of them, this was their 4th tour with us, which is just amazing. And it's like, having family get together again. So that was a particular highlight. I'd have to say the Dolomites tour, it was our very first tour in the Dolomites, and it was just stunning. The scenery in the Dolomites, it's like no other. You think it's beautiful on social media, and then when you're actually there, it really is even more beautiful. We had some surprise snow, so that was a really wow moment. And one of the things that really remains in my mind is we're up, in the top of Alpi di Susi, and we're in this little mountain hut doing our cooking class, and it's all cozy inside, guests having a glass of wine as they're learning to make dumplings, and the snow is falling outside, and it was just a magical moment. I really think that was something that everyone absolutely remembered. So that was very special. And then, of course, another special moment on a lot of our tours, we do try and, bring into them local festivals. And in the Dolomites, they have this really special festival in the fall when they bring the cows down from the mountains. And we got to go to this festival, and they parade through the town, and they're dressed up in flower garlands. And I thought it was going to be just the cows initially, but then they bring out the goats, the baby calves, and all, the little kids handing out food and throwing flowers. And it was just such a moment of community spirit and everything I think that our tours are about. There was, nature, the seasons, the locals, animals, food, wine. That was a really wow moment.
Well, that sounds amazing, and that's really what we envisaged, wasn't it, when we were pulling that tour together? And I know, in fact, that I'm actually going back there in a few weeks' time. Probably I won't see the baby goats, which you know how much I love the baby goats. But, definitely I do remember that hut, and I can't even imagine just how beautiful it was to see that. How about the other new tour that we did this year in southern Tuscany? What was your highlights from that tour?
That was a beautiful tour as well. And I think something that's so special on the Wine and Wellness tour is the locals that we meet and the connections that we get to have with local people that you just don't have, if you're visiting as a kind of normal tourist normally, I guess. So one of them, we go and visit this old historic noble house from like the 14th century, and Lorenza is her name. And so we, arrive to her house, and it's this grand palazzo that she inherited through her husband and the marriage, and we get toured around the house, and everyone's just kind of in awe of where we are. And she was so personable and friendly. And then she had organized, with us, but for our guests, it was a surprise violin performance with this lovely young lady from the village. And it was, this is going to sound a bit corny, but honestly, we actually almost all cried because it was I think music has such a special way of really making you feel things, obviously. And, it was the scenery, the locals, having this kind of music playing that was just amazing, seeing it live. And then, of course, we sat down to lunch in her house that she had prepared. So that was just such an amazing moment. And she's just one of many locals we met on that tour. We went to another farm, and we got to hear this fascinating story about Sandra, who was the owner of the farm, who was doing our cooking class. She was originally from Switzerland, and she moved over to Italy like 30 years ago, not really speaking any Italian. She came from not a farming background, and they had to learn everything. You think about how difficult that would have been. Oh, and she had 4 young children, by the way. So everyone was just in awe of her, and they just have created this most amazing property. And now they're supporting all of these different local families through the farm. And that was a really special moment. We had a pizza cooking class there, where something our guests loved was that they got to do every single process of making the pizza from start to finish, which was just amazing. They were kind of in awe, to see this whole process, as well as, of course, meet the locals. So there was so many other characters that we met, but they were 2 Italian women that really stand out in my mind.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Liv, because I know a lot of these pizza classes, you don't get to make the dough. That's what I found out recently, and I was shocked. I was like, well, the dough is the main part. The toppings are just that's just to enhance the dough. What's going on? So, yeah, I thought that was really fascinating that, people hadn't had a pizza class like that before. But obviously, yes, meeting the locals is pretty special. What about the zipping around the country in the Fiat 500s? That looked pretty cool too.
Don't even get me started. Yeah. So our last full day on that tour, we end with a hurrah because we get picked up from this gorgeous abbey, by the way. And we all hop into a little Fiat 500. You get to choose which color you like, and you zip through the stunning Val d'Orcia countryside, which I know probably a lot of our listeners might be more familiar with Chianti. So where Chianti is kind of more rolling hills and kind of really, really windy, Val d'Orcia is a lot kind of more open plains, the cypress trees everywhere. In the fall, it's kind of all golden because they've harvested the wheat, and it's just stunning countryside. There's the vineyards, of course, as well, the hilltop towns. So we really enjoyed our ride on the Fiat 500, and we ended up in Pienza, which is, you know, the town of pecorino cheese. So that was just a delightful way to spend the afternoon, rolling from one cheese shop to another.
I have to say my jaw dropped when I saw some of those sunset pictures you sent through. They were just incredible. Beautiful, beautiful. Thanks, Liv. Okay, Giulia, how about you? What are some of the highlights of your time in Sicily and Emilia-Romagna?
You know what, Katie? Liv used a word that I would also definitely use, which is the magic. Because really, during our tours, we really touch all the 5 senses, and every day we've got so many experiences. So let's think, for example, of the smell. Something that maybe you would not expect. In the Emilia-Romagna tour, for example, we use obviously our smell a lot, not only to smell the amazing prosciutto di Parma, which is an absolute highlight. I always say that the prosciutto di Parma smells better than Chanel No. 5, to me at least, and most of our guests agree. But we also make something very cool, which is a perfume making class. And we do that in Parma because Parma is also very well known for being the city of perfume, because Maria Luigia, the second wife of Napoleon, lived there. So with her, you know, we also experienced something different that I don't think we do for other tours. Also, the smell we use a lot because, as you know, in the Emilia-Romagna tour, we also talk about the traditional balsamic vinegar. And we find out very well how we make the black gold of Modena, which we do using different type of woods. So even like very touch feelings of touching the barrels, the pasta making class, and obviously the site, the beautiful towns that we have, and the city of Parma, and the city of Bologna, and the city of Modena, so much. Thinking about the hearing, also Liv mentioned about the music. This is also something that happens, especially in the Sicily tours. So we had a surprise on one of the evenings. We had a traditional Sicilian band playing for us Sicilian songs in dialect. So we even heard some dialect words. And for example, in the East Sicily tour, that was probably my personal highlight. We had a concert with 2 musicians that study about traditional songs from Sicily, but more from the Renaissance, so a little bit different than the normal traditional music. And we had that at our beautiful hotel overlooking the Baroque town of Modica while having vino cataratto. I mean, amazing musicians, magic. That's the word, Katie, magic.
Yeah, magic indeed. You have captured that brilliantly. And what I love in Emilia-Romagna is that contrast between the traditional, the consortium that we go visit there, and also this young up-and-coming balsamic vinegar maker who we're not going to share that because that's a top secret. It's so different, like the different approaches. And, you know, what I do love about Francesco is he does have respect for the tradition, but he's also trying to innovate with the balsamic production, and he's very inspiring. And I do find that combination of innovation and tradition so very exciting initially. It's one of the things that I think is very special about your country, Giulia. All right. Well, thank you so much. And now, Henna, how about you? What were your highlights of the tours you led this year?
It's so hard to choose. I was actually thinking, Katie, because you asked us just to kind of keep in mind some of our favorite parts of the tours, and both of them were spectacular. I mean, Piedmont and Liguria are regions that I thought, or I think I know relatively well. I live in Liguria. I studied in Piedmont. I know Turin, and it was full of surprises. I think that is also, like Julie and Liv said, that's part of the magic, is that it's really full of unexpected experiences, wonderful people, and then all of the senses. Giulia, when you were talking about the smells, we visited a basil farm in Liguria, and it was just, it was unbelievable. You don't think about these kind of things when you're eating pesto. You can rationally know that, oh, pesto comes from Liguria, pesto is wonderful, pasta con pesto. But then you go to the basil farm and there are greenhouses with just, square meters of basil plants, and you just poke your head in there and it's another world. It takes you to another world. We had a lesson in making handmade pesto, and it was really fun because a lot of people in our group were super surprised by the actual, how to make pesto. First of all, done by hand, mortar and pestle. You would never use a food processor. We Americans are guilty of just taking the path of least resistance. So surely any pesto that we tried to do homemade is in the food processor. But we did it the traditional way in mortar and pestle. And one of the things that stood out was folks couldn't stop saying, oh my gosh, there's barely any garlic in there. And really, it's just a sliver or two. And another thing, like garlic, we think of Italian and we think of garlic. You don't need a lot. So I loved that whole day around pesto and around basil, and felt like eating the fresh pesto from the mortar and pestle, like hand done, just on a slice of bread, was probably one of the most beautiful moments on our Liguria tour. But then also, Enrica from A Small Kitchen Genoa, she was with us for a lot of our activities. And like Liv was saying, sort of like going out with a bang on our last day, we had a cooking class with Enrica that was just fantastic. Beyond what we made ourselves, we were at a little winery in the town of Albenga. And we had been inside busy cooking with Enrica, and we peek our head outside and they're bringing the grapes in and they're crushing the grapes right in the driveway. So of course, moment of pause, we go outside, we check the wine, ask what they're doing, see what the process is. And it was lovely just running into something so, without a plan, getting the opportunity to see that. And when we finally did sit down to lunch, we had been preparing for 3 hours with Enrica as our super maestra. And next to us, the family sits down, and the grandmother of the family just brings out this pot of pasta that was larger than, in my entire thigh. It was enormous. And the whole family, like probably 4 generations, because it was the grandmother, her kids, 3 generations, and then their children that were having lunch together while, we sat down next to them with our prepared meal that we'd slaved away. And she whipped up something in 15 minutes to feed a family of 8. That was really, really special part of the Liguria tour for sure.
Oh, wow. That's a big praise indeed for someone that's working at one of the most renowned cooking schools in Italy. Unbelievable. Yeah, I think those serendipitous experiences can be the highlights, actually. We do a lot of planning to make sure everything's, really lovely, but sometimes it's just those special random moments that happen on tour that are really nice. I know down in Puglia, our driver there always pulls something out of his hat, whether it's pulling over for fresh peaches or dropping by his family's farm and letting the guests hug an olive tree. It's one of those things that you can't really plan for. And it does say a lot about the people that we work with, the really special people. What do you think some of the guests really enjoyed the most? What do you think were some things that they sort of weren't expecting?
I would say both with Piedmont and with Liguria. A lot of it was around the people, and whether it was Enrica in Liguria, who was our local guide, or Carlotta in Piedmont, they were just outstanding all-star people, not just in their knowledge, but just the warmth of their heart and what they wanted to share about their regions and about their hometowns. In Piedmont, we had a truffle hunt. And so this was a new experience for everyone, including myself. And we were all just blown away. I mean, we had this tartufaio, this truffle hunter. His name was Giampiero, and his dog Camilla. And Camilla, I mean, from the moment we met her, she was just everybody's favorite, not a person because she's a dog, but just favorite character of the trip. And it was their relationship that was really so spectacular, that the relationship between the truffle hunter and his dog, and she was one of, I think, 7 dogs he had in his home. To be able to hear this story, but also see them work together. He speaks in Piemontese to her. She really looks for his affection when she's looking for truffles. It was such a beautiful thing. And it's almost as though, their relationship, their love for each other was the epitome of also everyone's experience. So all of our guests are getting to see and encounter people who really love the places that they're in, where they work, what they do. And I think that's, really the special part. Because we can say, oh, we're going to visit a cheese factory, but you don't know you're going to meet the 4th generation cheesemonger whose great grandmother started it. Or we're going to a wine tasting, but you don't expect to have a 22-year-old who's veering from his father's path of hazelnut growing and all of a sudden taking over winemaking. I hope I can speak for our guests, but they really, really enjoyed making connections with all the people on our tours.
Yeah, that's exactly what we hope for, actually. And, a lot of these things become as a surprise to us too when some of these stories come out, don't they? And we're like, oh, that's amazing. And so I think, that element of surprise is there just for you as the tour hosts and tour leaders to experience too. Giulia, what about you? What was the things that made your guests go, wow?
I always make a joke that the food in Emilia-Romagna is life-changing. So during the tour, for example, we visit a super special dairy farm to taste Parmigiano Reggiano from a special type of cow that is very rare. It's called Vacca Bianca Modenese. And when we are there, we also try their ricotta. And Katie, everyone, I can tell you on every tour that ricotta is when I see our guest faces when they have the first taste, it's boom, you can see from their eyes everything is there is an aura coming out, life-changing ricotta. So yeah, absolutely, I would say the food obviously it's a major highlight. Well, and in Sicily too, course. Another thing that we do that is, I would say, life-changing, for example, is when we try the special chocolate from the city of Modica. It's a very special type of chocolate. So we actually have the experience that we make 2 bars together. So, even something especially local that we do that we can't experience anywhere else in Italy. So we, as Henna just said, we go for the local. And most of the times it's family-run, small artisans.
Amazing. So Olivia, how about you? What about the guests? What made them especially excited on the trips that you led?
So as the girls mentioned, obviously all the locals we met, the food, of course, it's all amazing and wow. But to say something a little bit different that was particularly evident on the Dolomites and the Wine and Wellness tour were the wellness moments on the trips, which is something that we're really trying to build into a lot of the tours, is these moments of relaxation and rest and wellness. So for example, in the Dolomites, it's amazing because, you go out for the day and you do your hike, or we go and visit a local producer in a winery, and then you come back to our gorgeous hotel and there's a beautiful spa, and there's an opportunity to use, the sauna, which is really, really big up there, the sauna culture, all the different kind of the Finnish sauna or the Swedish sauna. You can have a massage, and that was something that our guests really enjoyed. We also, on the Dolomites tour, went to the the terme, so the thermal springs in Merano. So they're famous for their healing waters in Merano. And that was a really special experience as well. And, an opportunity for the guests to just really relax and slow down and kind of reflect on all these incredible characters that they're meeting during the tour, take in all the food that they've had so far. So that was really enjoyable. And then the wine and wellness tour, we go to Bagno Vignoni, which is a spa town, again, famous for their waters. And we have a day where you can choose either, not everyone's a spa person. So if you don't want to go and relax at the healing waters and the pool or have a massage, you can do an e-bike tour. Which is really fun and, actually quite easy too, because you can use the acceleration on the e-bike to get you through. You don't have to, do too much pedaling if you don't want to. And you take in the beautiful scenery, and it's, again, just kind of a moment to slow down. I think that's something that guests really like. Of course, these tours are quite action-packed and full of amazing experiences, but it's always really nice for them to have a moment to rest and reflect and appreciate that they're on vacation too.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, if anyone is on the fence about these thermal baths, let me explain the level of relax that I have felt when I've experienced any of these thermal baths in Italy. And it's a different experience. It's not like you're going to a swimming pool.
No.
Yeah. It's slightly, not medicinal, but I mean, it can be if you want it to be, like, because they do a lot of medicinal treatments there too. But it's more, it is definitely a wellness experience, and I'm looking forward to going back to Merano in a few weeks. Just in fact, my son has demanded that we are going there, so off we go to swim in I think there's 20 pools. Not all of them are always open, but there's 20 swimming pools at different temperatures. I am like the one that likes the 37 degrees or whatever it is, body temperature. I love that pool. All right. Now, Liv, was there anything that the guests were surprised about or you were surprised about on the tours?
I guess I see it a lot with all of our tours, but it's always a nice surprise, is from that first moment when we pick up our guests. In a lot of the tours, it's Rome and Florence. They're big cities. They're amazing, obviously. Of course, you need to visit them. However, they're probably not the most relaxing of places, right? Lots happening, lots of tourists. And so it's always a really nice thing for me to see. And a bit of a surprise, I guess, is when we pick guests up from these cities, they just immediately relax as we get into the countryside, and they can really start their proper vacation. And they really appreciate with all of our tours that they're away from the hustle and bustle and kind of showing the regional side of Italy, the locals, and kind of a slower pace of life. So that's something that's always really nice to see. The other thing as well, and again, I guess it's kind of a surprise, but not a surprise. Obviously, everyone always loves the food and they're surprised by different flavor sensations. But more than the food and the sights that we see, it comes back to the locals that we meet too. And I think it's the people that they meet along the way that even days later and weeks later, and, we have these WhatsApp groups, so you keep in touch and you might hear from people down the line. It's the people that we've met during the tour that they'll remember. Of course, they'll say, oh, all the food was great, but what really sticks in people's minds is the local connections that we meet on the tour.
Yeah, amazing. I love seeing those WhatsApp groups and the little messages. Oh, we cooked that dish that Giulia showed us. And it's really a nice way to keep those memories going, because it's a big investment going on these trips, and you really want to make sure that you're having an experience that you can remember for a long time and maybe take some skills back that you were going to use in the future. Okay, Giulia, how about you? Anything that you thought the guests were surprised at that they weren't expecting?
Well, thinking about one of the best experiences I've done, for example, on my very last tour in West Sicily, one of the biggest highlights was actually going to this very remote farm, which has olive trees, and also wine, and actually having lunch at a big table in the middle of the countryside with the nonna, the mama, and the winemaker and olive oil maker. that was fantastic. So yeah, as Olivia said, of course, okay, the food, it shouldn't be taken for granted, but we kind of know that Italy is so well known for that. But the actual experience of going to a very remote farm and having such a simple, pass me the expression, lunch, but with the nonna and the family was fantastic. So, for example, also the passion that this farmer had in explaining every type of olive they have, because in Italy we have more than 500 types of olives, and he was very proud showing us also his very ancient trees. He had a 300 years old olive tree, and we were all amazed. The name of the tree was Sophia, so we were like, oh wow. So we not only meet the local, like we even meet monumental trees, like these things really stuck into our minds, like fantastic.
Amazing. Who would have thought the tree would have a name like Sophia?
Yeah. Was also the daughter of that tree. I forgot the name, but they named also the daughter. So cute.
No, I love those stories. It's so special. And I think what people need to understand is you can't organize this stuff, unfortunately, if you're traveling independently. So please, like a lot of people do reach out to me and ask, but you can't, because these people are running a farm. So they're doing their daily work and they may like to welcome some people into their home, but it has to be worth their time. So they're not going to do it for one-off visitors, okay? So it has to be organised well in advance and as part of a bigger activity. So even though our groups are very small, it's big enough for them to take the time out of their day to do that. So, yeah, unfortunately, if you are travelling independently, this is not something that's probably available to you. That's why we started these tours, because we did want people to experience that for themselves. Okay, Henna, how about you? What were people surprised about?
Well, I think Liguria is a fantastic tour in general. And I think the region itself is surprising. Most people, when they think about Liguria, they think of Cinque Terre, and that is where people congregate, Portofino, let's say the east side of Liguria. So all of our tour starts in Genoa and we go west. And I think it's a big surprise to discover what is west, what is going towards France in Liguria, because it's quite a hidden area. The infrastructure is not fantastic. There aren't a lot of trains. The highway is not always in good condition. But that being said, there were so many gems that we experienced when we were there. We went for an olive oil experience in a town of 300 people, and it took probably 30 minutes to wind our way up these roads, and had the most lovely hosts. I mean, really, Katie, like you said, this isn't somewhere you'd pop into. It's not somewhere you would really find on a map. I mean, I told my husband about the name of the town, and he's from Liguria. He's from this part of Liguria. No clue, like no idea. Yeah, I've heard of it, but no idea what's going on there. So I think the Liguria tour is all of a wonderful surprise, and really a fantastic surprise. And it's a nice contrast with the Piedmont tour, because I think our Piedmont tour is, especially in the fall, it's truffle season. So you have like the heavy hitters. We're in the land of Barolo, truffle season, and you think, what's better than that? And the surprise in Piedmont is that there's a lot of things. It's not just Barolo and Tartufo. Don't get me wrong, we loved eating and drinking our fair share of truffles and Barolo, but also discovering some of the lesser known grapes or the lesser known wines of the region was really a hit. We had a young winemaker who walked us through his portfolio, and we did have the Barolo, and it was fantastic, but also getting to try some of the white grapes that aren't as famous, the Arnaz, a sparkling wine that was made with a grape that no one has heard of. So these were the surprises. In a place that's so famous for a particular product or a particular wine, it's exciting to find things that are different and things that you hadn't imagined would be there. That, and I'd say vermouth was a big surprise for everybody, except for Buzz. She, one of our guests, was a huge vermouth fan, and so she knew a little secret way ahead of the rest of us. The rest of us were all absolutely charmed, would never think of drinking vermouth sort of on its own, but Turin being the birthplace and the capital, you have to try it. And then we were all hooked. So that was a fantastic surprise in the Piedmont tour.
Oh, ditch the Negroni for the vermouth. Oh, and I really do have a big passion for Liguria. And I think, wow, if people could just edge away from the Cinque Terre and explore some more, they will not know what's hit them. It's a really amazing, charming area that I think is very underrated, apart from obviously the hordes that go into the Cinque Terre. It's very beautiful. Okay, Giulia, last one. Anything that the guests or you were really surprised about on the tour?
So, for example, we also really enjoyed seeing the artisans making ceramics in Sicily. That's absolutely amazing. So both for the East Sicily and the West Sicily, we actually go and visit little workshops where we can see these crafts that are still made by hand. So we have the experience of seeing these beautiful ceramics, how they are made. So that's another highlight, in my opinion.
Yeah, I love the ceramics, and just meeting the families that have been making those things for generations has been, is really quite incredible.
So, Katie, one of the things that the guests were very surprised, and this can only happen with small tours, is on one day in West Sicily, we had very bad rain, which, sometimes it can happen. But with Untold Italy, we are very flexible to change the program last minute. So, for example, we went to this very tiny museum in the middle of nowhere in Sicily, and it was about immigration. And that was something our guests were absolutely flabbergasted with, because we went to this little town. We had a proud ambassador of this community taking us to see very uncommon things. For example, we went to see their Circolo Sociale, so that's like their meetup point, their community center. And he told us about the history of this town that was unfortunately badly hit by the 1968 earthquake in Sicily. And then he took us to the museum and he told us all about this community of immigrants. And this was really, really powerful, because some of our guests had Sicilian origins and they felt really connected. So I would say surprises like this as well.
You did such an amazing job with that, and I know the guests were really touched by that experience too. Okay, now Giulia, looking forward to 2025. What are you most looking forward to when you're on tour with the groups?
It's very hard to name a few. Well, of course, I'm very proud to take the Emilia-Romagna tour, because obviously it's my region, and I can't wait for our guests to actually also visit my town, which obviously for me has a special spot, which is called Spilamberto. And also, actually, during the tour, Katie, sometimes I call my dad, and it's another big highlight of the tour, even meeting like someone personal, someone from like an Italian family, I'm also looking forward to that. And of course, in Sicily, the amazing beaches. For example, we also go to Henna's town, which is Cefalo, with this beautiful church and the relaxing time there, hugging more olive trees, tasting the chocolate, tasting seafood. I mean, I can't stop. Too many things to look forward to.
Yeah, I think everyone does love meeting your dad, Giulia. He's got the winning smile, and if people look closely on our YouTube channel, he's a bit of a star on the YouTube, actually.
Yes.
Okay. Henna, how about you? What are you looking forward to next year?
Giulia said it quite well. It's really hard to choose. Everything is so fantastic. And I think Katie used the right word. There are always some surprises. And I think that's the lovely thing, is that you can go in with an idea. And even from my experience, I've been blown away by what we find. It's always something above and beyond what you're expecting, which I think is great. I definitely am looking forward to eating more. Although I have to say, when I come home, I'm so happy to get back onto a little lighter food schedule. But it is such a treat to try all these really typical local products and from producers who are really passionate about what they do. And I think meeting the people that come on the tours, this was something for me. This was my first year with Untold, and understanding the group members and who they are, where they come from. We've just had such lovely, lovely, lovely guests. As Liv said, a lot of repeat customers. I had a couple in my Liguria tour who had traveled with Untold before. And it was so fun to hear about their experiences in other parts of Italy and to know that they were going right on to it, another tour after ours. So everyone who joins the group has something to contribute. They all have great stories. Of course, they have their lives back home that they're usually willing to share about. So we had some really fun conversations in both groups about wedding planning, because I had wedding planners in both groups. And it was fantastic. Everyone pitching in, sharing their stories. It's a really nice community. So I think I'm looking forward to meeting all of our guests next year as well.
And Liv. Now, Liv sadly won't be leading any tours next year, but she's got some exciting news, and it has around the name of Sophia.
Indeed, exactly. I'm pregnant and giving birth in February, so I'll be watching with excitement from the sidelines. So we're having a little girl with the name Sophia as well, just like those olive trees. But no, I'm really excited, especially we've got one new itinerary launching next year that's completely new, actually, because the Chianti tour is a little new as well. But the Umbria tour, we are doing the Infiorata tour this June 2025. And I am so excited about that. It's the very first time we've led the Umbria tour in the summertime, and it's all centered around this very special flower festival in Spello that I went to a couple of years ago with my husband, and it is phenomenal. They spend the whole night before as, a community. They get into little teams and they work from the time that sun sets, so like 9 p.m. all through the night until like 6 a.m. in the morning, building these kind of tapestries on the floor, carpets out of flower petals. And they're amazing. So this tour was born really kind of to center around this idea of this community festival, and it's a party atmosphere. There's, beer in the street and porchetta, and it's all very Italian. So we'd go the night before, and then the next morning we get up early, which everyone's more than happy to do, because then you get to go and see the finished flower carpets first thing in the morning before the priest walks over them, and they're all kind of, a little tampered with later in the day. But that's such a special tour. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that come to life. And then, as I mentioned, the Chianti tour for next year is a little different as well. So we're doing, instead of having our whole time just in Chianti, we are doing a few extra exciting things and having a few nights in Lucca, which is a beautiful town. Every time I go there, we always say, oh, we could live in Lucca. It's so beautiful, medieval, everyone bikes around. It's just a really relaxed, lively kind of place. And so we'll be, having a few nights there too, and doing a few special activities in that area. They're really famous as well, near San Miniato for truffle hunting. So we're going to dip into maybe even the coast in Tuscany. So look out for some updates on those two tours, because they're, really ones to watch.
Yeah, amazing, Liv. Well, everyone, don't worry, Liv is always going to be involved in the tours. So she's got such a passion for showing people this untold Italy that we've all grown to love and appreciate over many years. And she will be missed by the guests on the tour, but the stamp of Liv will always be there. Okay. All right. Well, to all of you and to the team that's on the road at the moment, I can't tell you how proud I am of all of you. When Liv and I started creating these tours, we certainly had a vision for them, and it's so really delightful to see them come to life in the way that we imagined. And that is really all thanks to our wonderful hosts and tour leaders who pull it all together. So it's a fun job, but it's also got its challenges leading people on the road, especially, you know, with weather and all things like that. But you really do make Untold Italy tours what they are. And I can't wait to see what 2025 holds as we gather more Untold Italy guests into our fold and show them the magic of regional Italy. So thanks to all of you for coming on the podcast today and sharing your experiences over the last year or so. I really appreciate it. And as I said, I'm very, very proud of you. So thanks to you all.
Grazie, Katie. Thank you.
Grazie, Katie.
Thank you.
Wow, what a year and what a team. They are all simply wonderfully talented women who brighten the lives of all that cross their paths. What a privilege it is to work with them as they bring into reality the Untold Italy vision. Now, a week-long tour experience isn't for everyone, but I know from the many repeat guests that we have that they truly appreciate our small groups, all-inclusive pricing and attention to detail. Many of the special activities on our tours are not available to the general public, so our guests really tap into something unique and exclusive when they join us. And we love to watch those smiles when they relax into our Untold Italy. We have 18 tours planned for 2025, and of course we'd love to have you join us to explore the magic of regional Italy, whether it be elegant Piedmont, beautiful Sicily, or an unexpected side of Tuscany. Some of the tours are already fully booked, so be sure to reach out if you're interested in joining us in 2025. Of course, we spend all our time away from the busy cities, so you don't need to worry about crowds and all the hubbub around the Jubilee year. I've put a link to the tour's website, untolditalytours.com, and a new special offer for 2025 tours for those of you who are listening in November 2024. Grazie mille. Thank you to all our wonderful listeners for your ongoing support of Untold Italy over 250 episodes. I do hope you enjoyed today's show. If you did, we would love it if you shared it with your Italy-loving friends and family. Grazie mille to all of you who have already done this. It is so appreciated. And that's all for our 250th episode. Thank you for joining us, and I've got a big surprise for you next week. Something that's a bit different, and it involves one of the legends of travel, a guy that changed the way many Americans visit Europe. But until then, it's ciao for now. The Untold Italy podcast is an independent production. Podcast editing, audio production and website development by Mark Hatter, production assistance and content writing by the other Katie Clark. Yes, there are two of us. For more information about Untold Italy, please visit untolditaly.com.